The war was a whisper at first, a name on a map, far away. It was a place most people couldn't find. News reports flickered on television screens, black and white images, young men in uniforms, their faces smudged with dirt and something else, something tired. The reasons for the war were complicated, tangled like old fishing lines. People talked about it at dinner tables, in hushed tones. They didn't understand it, not really. They just hoped it would go away. Soon, they hoped the boys would come home. Tom received his draft notice on a Tuesday. The paper felt official, cold in his hand. He was only 19. He liked working with tools, fixing engines, the smell of grease and metal. Now he had to learn about rifles, about fighting. A knot formed in his stomach, hard and heavy. He walked through his small town, looking at the familiar streets, the old oak tree in the park. Everything seemed sharper, more precious. He didn't want to leave. He wanted to stay where life made sense. But the letter said he had to go, so he would. In a village nestled among rice paddies, Mai lived a different life. Her world was green, the green of young rice shoots, the green of the jungle that surrounded her home. Water buffalo moved slowly through the muddy fields, their breath misting in the cool morning air. The war for her was a distant rumbling, like far-off thunder. Sometimes, soldiers would pass by. Their uniforms were different colors, their languages strange. Her life was a rhythm of planting, harvesting, and family stories told by candlelight. She knew the earth, she knew the sky. Evelyn waited. Tom was her older brother, her protector, her friend. A constant dull ache lived in her chest now. She read his few short letters until the creases were soft, the ink blurred. She went to her job at the bakery, smiled at the customers, talked about the price of bread, but behind her smile, a silent film of worry played, over and over. The war was a shadow that stretched across her sunny kitchen. It touched everything, even the things that were supposed to be safe. Far from the fighting, she fought her own battles, battles of fear. The jungle was a different world. Green, so much green it hurt Tom's eyes. It swallowed sounds, it stole the light. He felt tiny, insignificant. The heat was a living thing. It pressed down on him, day and night. Sweat dripped, insects buzzed, a constant maddening song. He carried his M16 rifle. He carried his fear. He carried the names of the other young men in his squad. They walked, always walking, through mud, through thorns, waiting for something to happen, or maybe hoping nothing would. He wasn't sure which was worse. Days melted one into the next. Patrol, ambush, stillness, more walking. He learned to sleep in snatches, to eat cold food from a can, to clean his rifle until it was an extension of his own hand. There were small moments too. A shared cigarette under a poncho during a downpour, a quiet joke that made them all forget, for a second, where they were. Friendships were forged quickly, tempered by the heat of shared danger. He thought of home often, the smell of cut grass, the sound of his father's laughter, simple things, the things that mattered. For Mai, the war crept closer, no longer a distant thunder. It was now the storm itself. The soldiers came more often. Their faces were grim. Their eyes held no light. The village market, once overflowing with fruits and laughter, grew barren. Fear was a taste in the air. The children's games became quieter, their eyes wider. The familiar sounds of the village, the pounding of rice, the calls of vendors, were replaced by an uneasy silence. Or worse, the sudden, sharp crack of gunfire in the distance. The world she knew was breaking apart. Mai learned to be invisible, to listen, to watch. Her childhood faded like a watercolor painting left in the rain. She saw things a young girl should never witness. Homes burned, families wept. The safety of her village was gone. She helped her mother bury their small store of rice. She learned which jungle plants could fill an empty stomach, which ones could kill. The songs of the birds still filled the air some mornings, but they sounded different now, more fragile. She clung to the memories of peace like holding a precious smooth stone in her hand. Evelyn's life revolved around the mail. Each morning she listened for the mailman's truck. Her heart would leap, then sink. Most days there was nothing. Just bills, advertisements. The news on the television spoke of battles, of casualties, numbers. It was all so impersonal, so far away. She found herself praying more, not loud prayers in a church, but quiet, desperate whispers in the dark, for Tom's safety, for an end to it all. She kept his room exactly as he'd left it, his books on the shelf, his baseball glove on the bed. She tried to carry on, to be normal, for her parents, who aged visibly with worry, for herself, but it was like walking through thick fog. A part of her mind, a part of her heart, was always with Tom, in that hot, dangerous place she couldn't imagine. She wrote him letters filled with hometown news, the weather, the neighbors, the cat's latest antics. She kept her fears locked away. She didn't want to add to his burdens. She folded her worry into tiny, sharp creases, tucking it deep inside her. Tom read Evelyn's letters until the paper was soft and thin. Her handwriting was a lifeline, a connection to a world that still seemed real, a world without mud, without fear, without the constant threat of death. He kept them in a plastic bag tucked inside his helmet liner. Sometimes a package would arrive, cookies, often crumbled, a new paperback. These small things were treasures. They were proof that he was remembered, that there was a place, a life, waiting for him, if he survived. If, such a small word, so heavy. Mai watched her village shrink, more empty huts, more faces gone. She learned to read the signs, the flight of birds, the silence of the dogs, the way the wind whispered through the charred remains of a neighbor's home. Survival was a daily lesson. She found a strength she never knew she possessed. She cared for the younger children, the ones who had lost their parents. She told them stories, old tales of brave warriors and clever spirits, trying to coax a smile. Hope was a fragile ember. She cupped her hands around it, trying to keep it alive. The war didn't seem to have a beginning or an end. It just was, a grinding, relentless machine. More young men went, some came back, many did not. The world outside the jungle debated, protested, made speeches, but in the green maze the days were measured in footsteps, in heartbeats. For Tom it was about survival. One more patrol, one more night. For Mai it was about finding food, about staying hidden, about keeping her little brother safe. For Evelyn it was the endless ticking of the clock, each tick a moment longer. One afternoon Tom's squad was on patrol. The jungle was quiet. Too quiet. Then the world exploded. Noise, fire, screams. It wasn't a big battle, not like in the movies. It was fast, confusing, terrifying. He saw his friend Jimmy fall. One moment laughing, the next gone. Tom fired his rifle. Again and again, he didn't aim, he just fired. Into the green. Later, the silence returned, heavy, suffocating. The jungle felt different, stained. He carried Jimmy, not his body, but the memory, always. Mai's village was finally overrun. They had to flee, with nothing but the clothes on their backs. They joined a long line of people walking, endless walking, dust, hunger, fear. She carried her younger brother, his small body hot with fever. She whispered stories to him, stories her grandmother used to tell, stories of a time before the war. She saw terrible things on that road, but she also saw kindness, a shared piece of bread, a comforting hand, the small ember of hope. It flickered, but it did not die. The war eventually faded from the headlines. An armistice signed, troops withdrawn, Tom came home. He was alive, but he was not the same. He was quieter. His eyes held shadows the sunny skies of home couldn't erase. Evelyn held him, felt the strange new hardness in him. The waiting was over, but the peace was a fragile thing. Mai and her brother found a place in a resettlement camp, then slowly began to rebuild. The land was scarred, their hearts were scarred. The war was called forgotten by some, but not by them, never by them. Its echo lived on, in the quiet moments, in the dark nights, always.